Hello and thank you for joining us. You're listening to a Wedotalk with David Jaques. Thank you for joining us for this week's Wedotalk. Here in San Diego, and I have two guests with me today, and we're here attending the BNI conference, which is the Business Networking International group, and I'm delighted to have with us today, as I say, two people. Firstly, Claudia Thompson. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you.
So nice to have you here. We also have our very own Pattie Howard, who works for Wedo. Pattie is the Chief Diversity Officer for Wedo. And Claudia is the head of the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion panel for BNI.
Yes.
How long have you been doing this type of work?
On and off, I've been dabbling in the work, if you will, for probably since 2013. Okay. But for BNI, I've done it since the summer of 2020.
Oh, right. So
yes.
Almost a couple of years.
Yes.
Yeah. And are you a full-time employee at BNI?
I am. I also do some diversity consulting, but I am a full-time employee at BNI. I do multiple things.
Great.
Yes.
So what exactly is the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion panel? What's the work of that group and what do they do? Actually,
how it kicked off, I have been voicing that there is a lack of diversity, myself and many others, for a long time in BNI. BNI has been around for 37 years. However, 2 years ago it was 35 years. And of course, in the wake of the death and murder of George Floyd, BNI had a lot of members, like everyone else, calling in and calling out the lack of diversity and the lack of inclusion in a lot of cases, and they knew that something needed to be done. We had been having conversations, but this was something that sort of catapulted, and admittedly, it was a reaction to what was going on and necessary. So we started the panel, we put out a national call to all regions, both franchise and corporate owned, and we got an overwhelming amount of applications, and there was, it was in a short period of time. In like 2 days, we got 80 applications or something. So, which was pretty impressive. And then so it's a mix of from executive directors to brand new members, and just really, it's really powerful. The folks that we have on the panel. So then we work on different areas. So our focuses have been in the last 2 years looking at the training, looking at the marketing and communications efforts, also looking at the launch, fill, and retain for our regions, and of course the hiring practices, to see if they're fair and equitable. So those are the bulk of what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what attracts you to an organization like BNI? You could probably go and do this sort of job for a large corporation. I know that I live in Silicon Valley. Many of the large corporations, companies like Facebook and Google, they do all of these type of things. Is that something that would be attractive to you?
Actually, someone from a very large corporation, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say the company, had reached out about being a part of leading some diversity efforts. And the thing for me, I had talked to my mom about it and my sister, and they're like, it's weird, but BNI was kind of made for you. This is kind of a dream job. I've been a member of BNI for 19 years.
Wow.
So I was like 11 years old when I joined. I'm just kidding. But I was, it was pretty much my entire adult life.
Yeah.
And it really did change the trajectory of my life. I've always been a classic extrovert. I love being around people. I love connecting people. That was always my passion, and I'm very much a giver. So BNI was really designed for me. I often joke with Dr. Ivan Meisner about, thanks for creating my dream job when I was in third grade, because it was something that I didn't see coming, but was something that was so necessary. And it really has helped me over time. So I've been very passionate about what BNI brings to not only myself, but to others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about a lot, and I've talked to a number of guests recently, is the feeling of belonging, the feeling of community, and the feeling of having our people around us, and that is so important. And if you are venturing into a new industry or a new chapter of life, it's really important to feel that you belong somewhere. And that is probably part of what you also look at, is making sure that everybody is included.
Yes, I mean, I think, where I grew up in New York City, but where I grew up in New York City was quite homogenous. I was one of the few people of color in my classroom, in my neighborhood. And so being able to navigate white spaces was something that it was not uncommon to me. And so when I went to BNI, it was kind of looked like everything else I had ever been a part of. And so it was fine. And yet I still looked for someone like me, another woman, definitely another person of color. I was the third woman that joined at the time in my chapter, and there was no one of color at the time. So it was still like, I wish there was someone else here that could relate to me or look like me, so I can know. And a lot of times we hear that. People don't feel comfortable because they think it may not work for them.
Right.
And so this was, again, 19 years ago. We definitely have evolved a lot since then. But that was, it really matters to me to have people feel not only like to see themselves represented, but also feel included and welcomed, and engaged with. And so that's really what, drives me to do this work.
Yeah. Great. So, Wedo is a young company. We're growing. We're up to 30 odd employees right now. So we're all over the globe. Pattie here has been charged with looking at diversity and inclusion. What are the words of advice you give to somebody like Pattie as a young company? What are the things she should be looking to do?
Well, I think it's just really having conversations with folks initially, right? Trying to find out, because a lot of times the problem that I see, especially with larger corporations or even small companies, but they try to, put a Band-Aid on something or solve the problem based on what they think is needed, and really, rather than checking in and surveying the folks that work there and saying, okay, this is a problem overall, but what do you see as the issue? And tapping in and not just making assumptions, because a lot of times you can really miss the mark if you do that. So I'd say that was probably something that you could get started in, and just having those conversations, a lot of lunches and sit downs, and really assessing, maybe doing some surveys. And then from there, and then also another really great thing is to host town halls, to kind of have an open forum, and being not afraid to have those things kind of talked about, having some transparency. I find that people really appreciate that as well. And it wasn't easy at first for us. We did host some things like that, a series of those, and now it was totally, then it became fine. And then and the funny thing is, then people know this organization is affiliated, like is associated with being this way. And so if you don't like it, it's okay, but then, more than likely the people that don't align with those values are gonna, see themselves out.
One of the things I was impressed with in one of the meetings yesterday, because you guys do in-person events and you have the virtual thing going, and with Wedo, everyone is kind of located in a different place. Like everybody's everywhere. So we do a lot online, and so communication is so important, and knowing how to communicate in texting or writing, and they're not in person. So what advice would you give me in terms of just helping everyone, no matter where they are, understand how to communicate better when, like, when we're communicating in Teams or on video, but primarily when they're typing or in a chat or in a because people we read things and then our interpretations are going to be different based on we see capital letters or we see things like that. I mean, they might sound like minute to some people, but I've noticed how important it is in a situation where people are located in different regions. And you guys have mastered that from what I saw.
Yeah, I think, and again, and we, there was fear in the beginning of that. And I've hosted this for other organizations as well, this sort of town hall or live Q&A space and forum. And sometimes you can shut off the chat as far as chatting goes, just because you don't want it to distract you or anybody else that you have that's leading the conversation, or having the viewers get distracted, right? You could do that initially when you're having like dialogue, and then or leading a conversation, and then from there, then you can open it up. Some people, there's all kinds of really cool things that Zoom allows you to do, right? And just also not being afraid, like if you say that in this space of diversity, and a lot of times, again, people do censor or try to police or tone police people, and you have to allow people to, but sometimes you can't. I think the thing, it goes back to just like, here's an open forum. We haven't really touched this at all, but like, here you go. Again, having those smaller conversations or group forums, and you can do this virtually or in person, having those conversations first, it won't be a big surprise, right? It won't be, you're not gonna be overwhelmed by craziness. And like I said, back in June 2020, we did host something, and it was pretty insane, and it's recorded. You can find it online. It was
Send me the link.
And people were and we had people from like both sides. We had like allies and then like the opposite of allies, and it was wild. People were just out of control, but we knew that we had to create a space. I think having these conversations over time, and that's what I did too. I met with a lot of the regions. So a lot of the regions invited me to their team meetings or to their leadership roundtables, and we had those conversations. So again, I think hosting for smaller groups might make a huge difference.
Okay. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So Claudia, you do other things as well. I know you are a keynote speaker at events. You like to spread the word. Would you tell us about some of the other things that you do and things that are important to you personally?
Sure. Professionally, I do mostly between how to network. So again, that's really in my space with BNI, what I've done for members for years as a director. So teaching people how to network and connect is really just a passion of mine, and how they can help each other through connections and networking. And then I do a lot for Black and brown business owners that are just getting started. I do things from teaching them how to give their pitch to, again, how to connect with networks outside of theirs. And then also for BNI, in addition to the DEI panel, I'm the senior launch coach for CORE. And I cover Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and I lead a lot of the national launch trainings. So my team is responsible for launching chapters, which I think has a massive impact on diversity, because the bulk of BNI's staff, where we find most of our staff, come from the chapters. So if we have members that are diverse, we're going to be able to pull and get some directors and get some even higher level positions filled. Yeah,
that's great. And so that obviously also works with your personal goals and personal philosophies as well. These are things that are just very important to you.
Yeah, I mean, they matter, so I think that it's important. I can't stress enough about being inclusive. Some of the stories that you hear are pretty heartbreaking, whether, the intentions are, it's people are well-intentioned and they can still cause harm. And so we want to find ways to have it be a space that feels safe for people, and that they really truly feel appreciated, and that people are excited to get to know them and help them grow their businesses.
Does social media help or hinder?
It's interesting, right? So I was just mentioning this. Maybe I was talking to Ivan about this yesterday, but BNI always says, and even today we've prompted, no politics, no religion, right? Like most people know. Not to say, like, who did you vote for? Like in a professional setting, right? Like no one's doing that, right? Not no one, but a lot of people, right? That's pretty common. And I think when we start talking about some social issues, or even social media, we didn't have social media 35 years ago, 37 years ago, right? Even when I joined, we had no apps, we had no smartphones, and we had no social media. So to pretend like I don't know what your politics are, I think is weird. It's a weird, like, I just saw you just said stuff that like directly impacts me and my child and my friends and my, and I don't like it, like we don't have to go there, but it may hinder me from giving you business. I just don't feel comfortable, right? And so I think before we used to kind of hide how we were, and probably until about 6 years ago is when things started to kind of blow up and everyone was just comfortable. But definitely, with the birth of what we know now as social media, 100% is when you started to kind of know what was on people's minds.
Yeah.
So I think that if we just acknowledge it, and some people can get through it and be fine, but I think it's something, again, you also have to understand if you feel compelled to share your opinions on your personal page, and you have people that are in your chapter that you network with, you have to also understand that there's a risk that you might lose business depending on what those views are. So, yeah.
And there is always the ability on any social media to unfollow or unfriend someone.
Yeah, I mean, they have cool things like, muting and that's great. You don't have to like technically unfriend, because that's almost like hostile.
Right.
When you unfriend someone, right? It's like cutting them off.
Yeah, the mute is,
Mute is great. Like if you don't want to see or hide, but again, if you truly don't want to associate with someone, and people should still feel comfortable. We have had situations before where someone saw something on social media that was just really hurtful and painful. Luckily, we were able to put them somewhere else, but those things happen. And we want to try to find a way for people to, you can't beg people to have compassion and empathy, and yet that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
My daughter, who is about to graduate from college, and she's studying family and human services, and she works with people with disabilities and special education. And diversity and inclusion is a huge thing for her. Fairness is a huge thing for her. And we're having a conversation around the dinner table one day, and I forget even what it was, but she made a comment, "Well, Dad, you're a white man, you're naturally privileged." And I said, well, I don't feel that I've ever been privileged in any way. I mean, I've had to work for what I've got, but I don't feel that privilege has ever come naturally to me. And you know what she said? She said, well, how would you know? And that actually was a very impactful thing that she said, because I thought, well, no, because if it's me looking as a candidate for a job against somebody else, and the other person doesn't get the job, I know that there's another candidate. I don't know who that person was. I don't know their profile. I don't know their background. Maybe that's happened, but I don't know. So it is very much a case of sometimes we're sheltered from something which is important like this because we simply don't know. And we need to widen our eyes, and we need to look more globally.
I mean, I've had that conversation with fellow white cisgender heterosexual men, presumably, and they often say, well, I've worked hard. It's like almost like a defensiveness, right? And fragility and defensiveness is huge when we're having these conversations a lot of times, and it's not an attack. And I think that that's the problem, because it can get to a place of like, well, wait, you don't think I earned this? And it's certainly not what we're saying, but that's so insightful of your daughter. She sounds awesome, and I'd love to talk to her. But yeah, I mean, you have no clue. Because if we look at each subset, if we're talking about intersectionality, different identities, you are privileged in likely most of them. Even use of language and educational background and, children, like all of these things, like even having those, but then add on top of that white male.
I was sharing with one of our coworkers yesterday that an experience that I had was actually my introduction to what privilege is. And I didn't know, of course, I didn't know what that word meant or anything. I was in second grade, so I was a violinist, and I was first chair in the junior orchestra, whatever. So we would do these concerts in Cleveland, Ohio at the Symphony Hall. So this was the big event, right? And here I am, second grader, and just, my violin, and I could do vibrato with it, and I had written a little concerto, and we were going to perform that. So there was a student, because I went to, similar to you, I went to school with children of all different cultures. So I wasn't in just a public school. But anyway, so in this orchestra, the second chair was a young lady, and she was white, and her parents came, everybody brought their family. So we're sitting there, and her parents were talking to the conductor who was at the the stand. And so if I'm first chair, so I'm close enough to hear the conversation. Again, I'm in second grade, and they're having a conversation with him, saying that for this performance, their daughter needs to sit first chair. Because they were donors, it had to do with money, and whatever they donated. And so the next thing I knew, the conductor came over and asked me to get up and switch seats with her. And then she came and sat and was first chair. And my mom and family are sitting out there, and so here come the tears or whatever. But it was the feeling that I got from that, even if I didn't understand what the terminology and all of that was, it's like something I never forgotten. So I was saying to our coworker, there's some things in life you can't, no matter how much I explain it to you or whatever, you can't fully understand if you don't have any reference for it at all. You know, well, of course you know. So to learning how to communicate, like with your daughter, the way she said it was perfect. Learning how to communicate something like that you don't really have a reference for, you wouldn't know. You don't even have anything to associate with some things that we might talk about with. So learning how to communicate that's what I'm really focusing on, and hoping I'll learn some from you of how to do that even better.
That's a great thought, Pattie. And one of the things that is very important to me is the area of mental health and mental well-being.
Yeah.
And I've had a history myself of mental illness, and very similarly, somebody that's never suffered, never had it happen to them, there's a feeling of lack of understanding, not wanting to know, not wanting to understand. It's not my problem. And so it's not my problem, it will go away. Well, it doesn't go away. And once again, it's about educating, and that's one of the reasons why I've done a lot of work in the mental health advocacy area, is to get the word out and help people understand, and just get them to know that there shouldn't be a stigma about talking about this. And in any subject, it should be openly talked about. There shouldn't be a stigma. You can disagree, but you know, we can have a conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, anything can be, I believe, resolved through communication.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that, and so that would be something that takes a little bit of your privilege away, right? Is having mental illness as like another bucket, right? And so I think that if we look at all of that and see, and it's exactly right. Like, people don't understand. It's like, well, what's the matter? Get out of bed. Like, come on, get up and go to work. Do it. And like, oh, how come these people can't get a job? Or how come, any of these things? It's like, well, there's so many other obstacles that you don't even see that are there. And that's what it's about, getting interested in what are those obstacles and what can I do to help remove them for you.
Yeah.
Someone with privilege. So, yeah.
Exactly. Claudia, you shared a lot of very good principles, a lot of good thoughts, and things which I hope will provoke many thoughts in other people. Have you published these ideas anywhere?
Not yet.
I like that
Not yet.
answer.
I've been working on a book for like 12 years, so I'm sure I'll be ready. It's evolved over time. But I imagine I would publish some sort of memoir, just given a lot of the things that I've gone through, particularly around racial trauma, and definitely helping people. So I see myself doing something inside of the space of both diversity and networking.
Great.
Yes.
And what is in the future for you, aside from publishing your book? What are the other things that you would like to do?
Become Oprah Winfrey. She has to retire, and I'm ready to take her place.
There you go.
Yeah. No, I think, I do love connecting with people and engaging people. So I see myself always in an entrepreneurial setting, but probably doing even some other next level as far as the speaking piece goes. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for sharing your thoughts, and thanks, Pattie, for also yours and for the work that you're doing for Wedo. Is there anything you wanted to ask Claudia before we wrap up?
Oh, just let's stay in touch. I've learned just a ton just sitting here with you today.
Yeah. No, likewise. Yeah.
Good. Great. Well, thanks again. I wish you every success with the book, with the Oprah aspiration. I'll be looking out for you in the future, and with everything you might do in the great work that you're doing, and I hope that you're able to recruit more people to do the same.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully we can bring you into something that we're doing at Wedo to help us, give us a training or something. We can bring you into that. And I will absolutely have you do it.
Yes, Silicon Valley is one of my favorite places, so. Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to Claudia and Pattie share their thoughts here today. If you'd like to leave your comments below, please do, and subscribe to our channel. We upload a new video every week. And until next time, be well. See you soon. We upload a Wedo Talk every week. So if you enjoyed this one, please subscribe and leave your comments below.